Good evening, Kenton community. My name is Sabatino Samato. I'm your superintendent, and this is your weekly Connection update. Some very important topics this week in the Connection. First, really talking about Kenton and our spirit of giving. Then we get into a little section about emergency days. We reflect on Pearl Harbor Day. We, of course, have our school and district highlights. We have that news section, which is a safety tip for families. And then we finish off with our recognition. So let's get going. First, Spirit of Giving in Kenton. I really encourage all of our families to look at this section. You'll see just a handful of exemplars from our district. The wonderful thing about this time of the year is that it really brings out the best in everyone. And there's no exception here in Kenton. Those handful of examples that you'll see in the connection really connect people to what's going on in our schools, and most importantly, that pride that our staff and our students have in their life of service and giving, and it's wonderful. Read about those examples. I really encourage you to. Our next section is on emergency days, and folks, the reason why we have that in this edition is because recently we just had 2 snow days. Now, I know it's very clear in our calendar this year, we only have 4 emergency days in the calendar, and those 2 days, of course, we were worried burned 2 of those 4 days. Here's the good news. Because they were declared states of emergency by the state of New York, those 2 days will not count against those 4 emergency days. So in essence, we still have 4 emergency days left on our calendar that we will use if we need them. If we exceed those 4 additional days that we still have in the calendar and we had to use more days, we would shift to a remote option. But for right now, we still have those 4 emergency days. So that's important to understand. The next section we have is Pearl Harbor Day, and of course, December 7th every year, we really take that time to remember Pearl Harbor. Take some time with your kiddos, especially our youngest students, and really talk about the importance of December 7th and understanding that in our American history. Then we have our next section, of course, safety tips for families. And for all of our families, the tips in this week's connection are extremely important. Not only is it about internet safety, but we also provide some tips, some procedural and routine tips that you could work on with your kiddos at home. It's a really good section this week. I really encourage you to pick it up and check it out. Then we, of course, go into our school and district highlights. We have one from middle and high school students focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion, new farm to school program opportunities for December, our athletic director selected for Section 6 Positive Change Award, Franklin Elementary students make lava lamps for Science Day, Kenmore East and Kenmore West students attend leadership conference, and you just put those stories on top of that first section in the spirit of giving, you see all the wonderful things happening in our schools during this month. And finally, we end off with our recognition. And this week, we recognize one of our own students, Mr. Damian Ish, a senior at Kenmore West High School, who is the captain of the Blue Devils varsity hockey team. And you want to talk about our students persevering and that Kenton pride and spirit. Damian is the absolute exemplar of what that stands for. A very heartfelt, warming, touching story. Please take the time to read about Damian in this week's connection. And that brings us to the end of the connection for this week. And folks, all I can say is that this year is flying by. And here we are now. We're very close to our winter recess. We talked about last week. It's a good time to set goals. It's always a good time to have conversations with kids. Please, as a community, we can't let that escape us. That's the point of education. Even when they tell us that it bothers them, leave me alone, you're tired. Absolutely, because that's our job, to continue to reiterate the important messages that we have, especially in today's day, 2022, all the things that we know to keep our kids safe and absolutely focused towards achieving their goals. Because we are Kenton proud. Only together will we be Kenton strong, and will, of course, continue to move Kenton forward. Thank you very much for your attention, and have a wonderful weekend.